Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you, the viewing and listening audience, to the 7th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Finance and Legal Affairs. Well, it's the first meeting for the year, so I suppose I can wish you all Happy New Year. Expecting another tumultuous year, but we'll see what happens. We are convening today the second public hearing. We started, if you remember, in November. And what we're looking at is an inquiry into the impact of COVID-19 on the micro and small enterprises sector. Now, members of the listening and viewing audience, you are invited to participate in this inquiry by posting or sending your comments via the Parliament's various social media platforms, Facebook page, ParlView, the Parliament's YouTube channel, and Twitter. So I'd like to begin by welcoming officials who are appearing before us today. We have officials of the Tobago Division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. We have officials from the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Service Industries, from the ARIMA Business Association, the San Juan Business Association, officials of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association, and from the Semi-Grande Chamber of Commerce. Last but not least, we welcome all of you here this morning to this inquiry. I am Hazel Thompson Ahi, and I'm the chairman of the committee, and I now invite other members of the committee to introduce themselves, please.
Good morning, I'm Sanam Hussain.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Thank you, Madam Chair. Terence Dial Singh, member.
Good morning, all. My name is Marvin Gonzalez, member.
Good morning, all. Keith Scotland, member.
Good morning, everybody. Clarence Rambarat, Vice Chairman.
Mr. Medial is with us.
Sorry, Chair, I'm juggling another hearing, but good morning, everyone. Jancy Lachmedial, member.
Okay. I will now invite members, officials, to introduce themselves, starting with the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, please.
Good morning, all. My name is Diane Haddad. I am the chairman of the Tobago Division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. I am not seeing Mr. Wong, who was online waiting for a while, so I don't know if we can check into that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm here, David Wong. Yes, good morning, David Wong, Management Committee, Tobago Division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce.
Welcome. Should we have officials of the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Service Industries introduce themselves, please?
Hi, good morning, Chair. I'm Mark Edgell, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Services Industries, and I'm here with my CEO, Ms. Vashti Gaidi, who will introduce herself now.
Good morning, Chair and members. I am Vashti Gaidi, the Chief Executive Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Services Industries.
Thank you and welcome. Officials of the ARIMA Business Association.
Good morning. I am Delecia Mohammed. I am the Assistant Secretary of the ARIMA Business Association, and I am joined by Mr. Sudesh Ramkisoon. Sudesh, over to you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sudesh Ramkisoon, Second Vice President of the Arima Business Association and business owner in Arima.
Welcome. Sanwa Business Association, please.
Great morning, Jason Roach, President of San Juan Business Association, and I'm here with my Public Relations Director, Emerson John Charles. I'll hand you over to him now.
Good morning, everyone. I am Emerson John Charles. As Jason said, Mr. Roach said, I am the Director of Public Relations of the San Juan Business Association.
Welcome. Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association.
Yes, good morning. I am Michael Walmsley, a director of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association. I represent small accommodation properties. I'm also owner of Hibiscus Heights Villa and Apartments. And my colleague will speak now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Curtin Sorayas, director of the restaurant sector in Tobago, and also owner of restaurant and small properties.
And last but not least, we go to the Semi-Grande Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning. My name is Preston Sam, President of the Semi-Grande Chamber of Commerce. I am accompanied by Ms. Giselle Lawrence, one of our executive members, and I hand you over to Ms. Lawrence now.
Ms. Lawrence.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair and members. My name is Giselle Lawrence, and I am the Education and Research Officer for the Semi-Grande Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. I just want to remind you and to advise the public of the inquiry objectives. 1, to evaluate the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on micro and small enterprises. 2, to identify the factors and conditions which may inhibit business continuity for micro and small enterprises post-COVID-19. And finally, to assess the existing policies, projects, and programs of the state designed to support the economic recovery. So we've heard and read a lot of it in the media, and now we want to hear directly from you on these matters. We begin by asking the following persons to make brief opening remarks, maximum of 2 minutes. We begin with Ms. Diane Haddad, Chairman, Tobago Division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Over to you, Ms. Haddad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on the fact that Tobago is a very small economy, pretty much dependent on international arrivals, and of course, the 1.4 million persons from Trinidad coming on the island to assist with the economic development in terms of consumption, Tobago would have suffered a 13-year spate anyway prior to this of a downturn and hurt. And COVID would not have helped in any way because COVID-19, of course, our waters and access to us was obviously curtailed and in many instances denied. So that being the case, our dependency would have come straight from the output of the THA and the one check that supports the families that work there. And that is all the income that would have been spent on this island during this period. And owing to the fact that persons themselves did not move around very much because of the conditions that we are existing in, we also had a further demise of income and revenue. Having said that, the small and micro businesses, which I want to say would mostly be what our economy is made up of in Tobago, we are in a position where many people are falling by the wayside. People who are tenants are in a deficit, of course, based on the fact that landlords are in need of their rent at this time. And of course, we know the cycle and the knock-on effect of what happens. Buildings that were unoccupied, that are tenanted and so, are also falling into disrepair because there's no revenue to do any sort of maintenance. And of course, because there isn't the movement, we cannot get, as I explained, consumption. So there were programs that have been put in place by, I want to say, through the THA and so. But once more, we would have had issues where that funding does not generate or find itself down the right avenues for the right type of fixing. And therefore, that all of that needs to be addressed in a more meaningful way. The impact of the arrivals from Trinidad, of course, is going to start, if it can, to make some sort of move. But let me also say that Trinidad, we know, is suffering. So therefore, I'm not sure how much of that, and therefore what's going on with the international arrivals becomes even more of a monster in terms of us being able to flow and carry on the requirements of COVID-19 to have guests come to us. So that being the case, Madam Chair, I want to say that Tobago is not in a good place. The private sector, which needs to be developed in a meaningful way, has fallen by the wayside and is in a struggling position, juggling whether you pay TNTEC or WASA or TSTT for connectivity on a timely basis. So thank you very much. I hope I did not go past my 2 minutes.
Oh, no, you did very well, Ms. Haddad, I must say. So now I move to Mr. Mark Edgell.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. I will take the opportunity this morning to introduce the TTCSI to this committee. So first and foremost, I would like to thank you for including the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Services Industries in your discussions today. TTCSI was established in October of 2006 as an umbrella organization that brings together all services organizations and associations in Trinidad and Tobago. As an alliance of professional services associations and organizations, the TTCSI functions as a focal point to lobby, channel, and address trade and services issues and services development issues, which are critical for the sector to thrive in this competitive global environment, and for the growth of sustainable services in the economy, which contributed as much as 58% to real GDP in 2018. TTCSI has been recognized as the sole supporting organization for the services sector in the country and currently represents 56 member associations, which together represent over 650,000 members, or approximately 50% of our population. Over the past 8 months, we have placed emphasis on working with services providers to become better organized and structured in the processes of establishing an association, some of which are woodworkers, live events, technical professionals, and janitorial service operators, just to name a few. The majority of our members have been heavily impacted by the pandemic, hence the reason we welcome this opportunity to bring to the forefront issues impacting services providers and firms in the country. The TTCSI would like to stress that we recognize that we are in uncharted waters. However, we can only navigate the course if we identify and face the problems proactively and directly. The primary mechanism to tackle the issues is to ensure that we have the pertinent information and data, and this is exactly what myself and my CEO have been engaged in over the past 8 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sudesh Ramkisoon, please, I invite you to present your opening statement.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Arima Business Association, I think, has been affected greatly by the pandemic due to the business types that we have in Arima, which is a lot of retail stores. We have been trying to cope with the pandemic through whatever measures put in place, and business owners have tried to be innovative through their changes and going to online and so on. But the difficulties still arise in those areas because there's a cost factor attached to it, and then there's also the need for the older businesses to understand the new technology and how to adapt to that. unfortunately, some were not able to adapt and had to close their doors. During the last 2 years, the government has tried to put measures in place to assist, and it being a novel virus, we had to respond in very quick manner. The Arima Business Association has tried through membership to inform and also prepare our members on various areas that would have become very ticklish, I would say, that being the issue with the labor and how to deal with staff during the COVID period, and in terms of how to retain staff and the issues with the vaccination programs in the private sector. That being said, I think Arima is being affected more than most areas simply because we don't have that regular foot traffic that we would normally have, and it's affecting businesses across the board. I hope that through this committee here, we can shed some light on our area and hopefully create some solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jason Rose, Samoa Business Association, please.
Hi, good morning. Greetings from Salmon Business Association. Currently, to be very specific in terms of micro and small enterprises in San Juan, we are seeing a 5% drop-off on stakeholders in our database that have brick and mortar establishments. And the biggest challenge for us in San Juan has to do with that large overhead of rent and lease. I know the safe zone initiatives, in particular, those establishments that have to be governed by safe zones, be it restaurants and bars, right, are having a lot of difficulty in terms of being sustainable with a reduced traffic in terms of patrons to their establishments. We would like to get a greater understanding on how we as an association can bring some financial resources to this particular segment. And I will listen very carefully and make contributions in that regard. There's also another serious problem in San Juan with regards to COVID regulations. Because of the economic downturn, what we have been observing is that businesses are finding it very difficult to enforce precautionary measures in terms of providing soap and sanitizer and also checking people's temperature. So it is a very peculiar position where we are trying to manage being to sustain ourselves as well as join the fight in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is my contribution for now. Madam Chairman, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roach. May I invite now Mr. Mike Walmsley, Director of Small Hotel and Guest Houses, Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Our Tobago tourism sector entered this pandemic in a weak position, having experienced declining visitor arrivals over the last several years, from 87,796 in 2005 to a low of 19,542 in 2019. Personal financial revenues have depleted and income is reliant on month-to-month occupancy. Eligible properties qualified and received financial help in the form of a grant given in 2020. Not all were able to apply, and some have still not received the second half of their grant. However, the stipulation of the grant funding was to upgrade properties, not to assist with general operations, working capital that have been severely depleted through closure and lack of visitors. In fact, it's important to state that out of the 50 million grant offered last year, approximately 120 properties in total were successful, 38 of those still to receive their second tranche. And if these 38 are paid, there would still be some 24 million left unused out of that grant. During the budget speech last year, an additional 50 million grant was announced TTEL sent out applications and requirements to access the additional grant in November. Once again, this grant can only be used for certain upgrades and cannot be used to replenish any working capital. To date, there has been no information as to disbursement. SME loans have been offered with low to zero interest. However, many are excluded through requirements stipulated to access these loans. Additionally, many already have outstanding loans, some in moratorium. The need here is loan restructuring, not just additional loans adding to the burden. Invited grants alone are not the answer to stabilize and regrow accommodation sector. Accessible, low-cost loans, low-cost restructuring would facilitate the survival and growth. This, along with additional flights, domestic tourism marketing via the division and international marketing by TTEL, should be the road forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walmsley. And now we have Mr. Preston Lawrence. Preston Sam, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this inquiry on behalf of the Semi-Grande Chamber of Commerce. In our jurisdiction, many businesses have been affected by COVID-19. And in most areas, and not more so in most areas, locally and internationally, the businesses in our area have struggled to regain strength after reopening due to accumulation of arrears and rent, and also the lack of capital investment for reinvestment. Capital to reinvest in business. Many business owners lack the knowledge on grants, and this has caused a lost opportunity, as the case may be. For those who have applied for grants, we have seen some receiving grants and some still pending to receive. Despite all the negativity that COVID has brought upon the businesses in the Semi-Grande area, we have seen some businesses trying to utilize other means of operating businesses. Example, restaurants are using curbside pickup. We also have actually 2 new delivery services in the Semi-Grande area doing food delivery. So there are some positives coming out of it, but at this present time, I would say 80% of the businesses that were operating before or pre-COVID-19 are now operating. And the 20% would have been businesses that would have gone on to do online business because of arrears in rent, and they can't continue paying the rent at their establishments. And these businesses are actually run by the owners themselves. So you hardly find that the small businesses are actually hiring persons, but more so they are actually running the businesses themselves or actually having family members assisting them. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Sam. Well, we've heard quite a bit from officials about what's happening with your business over the last couple of years. And we now commence the questioning based on the objectives. And I just want to remind you to, when you're about to speak, to activate your microphone. And when you're finished, to turn it off, and so the other person can be heard. So we will now proceed questioning, and remember, please, to direct your questions through the chair and not to one another. Questions and the responses, yes?
Okay, Chair, through you, if I may begin. I want to pose a question to the business associations, any of the 3 represented here, Arima, Samoa, or Semi-Grande. Anyone can answer. I think the answers would be fairly similar. But from the perspective of the small businesses and the state of emergency, do you feel that during that period of time that the operations of the businesses were severely curtailed? And, what types of businesses you think suffered the most during the period of the state of emergency with the curfew being in effect? So I could hear from either of the three.
From an ARIMA standpoint, the state of emergency affected quite a bit of the entertainment businesses, that being the bar and the nightlife, the restaurants to a greater extent, because their key times would have been on a Friday and a Saturday evening. And due to those restrictions, they would have had a lot of reductions in sales and even patronage. The trickle-down effect of that is also the closed stores will have less sales going on, and even the DJs, the sole traders are the DJs, the entertainers, the influencers, those type of people, they would have been severely affected in ARIMA. So more so in ARIMA, the nightlife, I would say quite a few restaurants would have been affected as well. And that trickle-along effect would have been to the retail garment industry, and even sole traders like party promoters, DJs, and all those extracurricular things that come along with that, the rental of vehicles, and so on. So from an ARIMA standpoint, that's what was most affected by the state of emergency during the COVID lockdown.
Anybody else would like to respond to that question?
Sure. Jason Roach, I'm San Juan Business here. I would like to also add to what ARIMA said. In terms of industries affected would be spas and salons, barbershops, as well as taxis, because as we know, taxis have also been operating with less capacity in the maxis during the SOE due to the regulations. And also the spas and salons they are really under pressure in terms of losing clientele, I guess, with less disposable income from people that are losing income from their jobs and employment. It has a trickle-down effect to these businesses that I call luxury services, and they are really feeling the wrath of the pandemic. That's it for me, Madam Chair.
Have you noticed any change since the SOE has been lifted and the curfew is no longer in effect? Have you noticed that some of the smaller businesses are now, experiencing some sort of relief or improvement in terms of sales and in terms of, patronage?
If you would allow me, Madam Chair, I would respond accordingly. We have actually seen change in the Semi-Grande area where restaurants are now able to open a little later, and some of the the food and drinks industry it has the opportunity to open later, and you are also allowing persons to come into these business places at a later time, because these are the hours for these businesses to be operating. So yes, we have seen some change.
So you think that the increased opening hours really helped with things picking back up for the smaller, but we're looking at the small ones here, right? The smaller businesses like restaurants and independent, not large chains. You think that the increased opening hours has improved for them?
If I may, Mr.
Personally, I would. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I would say it has assisted in a small amount, not in a large way, because businesses, even like restaurants, I myself being a restaurant owner, you're opening later hours, you're still not seeing the normal influx of persons that would have been coming to establishment pre-COVID. And I think it's because people, are trying to be more safe and staying indoors,
Okay. In terms of the, sorry, Mr. Charles, you wanted to say something? Chair, through you,
Well, what I was going to say was that since the end of the state of emergency, there has been an uptick in at least traffic in many areas and businesses and sales, not on the level as it was post-COVID, but many of these small and micro businesses are very cautious as the large amount of uncertainty. They don't know when things will revert back to a lockdown. So that's a major impact. That's a major thing that is holding them back.
Could I hear from we have Mr. Hossain and Haddad and Edgel waiting.
Madam Chair, I'll give way to Ms. Haddad and Edgel if they have to respond to Ms. Lakshmidial, and then I will ask my question.
Mr. Hossain, I'm not hearing you too well. But anyway, through you, Madam Chair, I want to just say a little something here. The effects of the pandemic in its initial state would have had some level of, I want to call it excitement, if you may call it that, where persons were moving around and trying to get things to carry themselves comfortably indoors. And we did not understand the depth of it. Persons did not understand the depth and length of it. And because of that, there was this movement going around where persons did not initially feel the impact of this. The length of this drought is what is causing or has caused a massive negative outcome, because you now have a wet blanket or fear factor over the nation or the world based on how it's addressed. And therefore, although people were in lines, there were misconceptions of people in lines outside of supermarkets and so, you did not have the flow going through a store because people were standing in a line for half an hour or 45 minutes before they got entrance. After going into a store, regardless of what type of business it is, even in the banking sector, you trying to get service as a small or micro business, and you have to spend time outside in a line before you got into an establishment, takes away from how much you can get done in the hours that we would have been operating within in the curfew times and so. Now, because of whatever people spent then, people have become more cautious because, of course, people are losing their jobs. And of course, somebody said it, Mr. Roach, disposable income. So people are now managing what monies can be spent where. I want to say that the devastating effect on this is now starting to hit home in a really deep way, because whilst people had funds or savings that they would have expired now in trying to hold it together, that too has eroded. So the effect of it, I want us to get not just what happened in Arima and Semi-Grande or whatever, although I know that we are here representing our areas. I want us to understand the knock-on effect of how this thing really is happening with even the driving from Crown Point to Scarborough. I am able to conquer that in nothing more than 5 minutes now because the road is clear. There isn't movement. People are now at a standstill in terms of fare. So I just want to put that on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I invite Mr. Edgel, I'd just like to say that, Ms. Haddad, you'd appreciate that the long lines would have been occasioned because of the fact of the social distancing, that you couldn't, have people going in all at the same time. So there's always going to be a balance, about what people's needs are and what are the requirements, because fundamental, crucial is keeping people safe.
Madam Chair, and why I mentioned it is because there was a perception that the lines outside indicated how much business people were doing. So that's the point. The lines gave an impression, but I wanted to just explain that was a wrong interpretation of what the look was. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Just, Chair, before Mr. Edghill, there's something a burning question that I have for Mr. Charles, based on what he said before. So before we digress away from it, if I could just ask this brief question.
John Charles is his full surname, as I understand.
Sorry. Oh, Mr. John Charles, yes. You remind me of a lecturer that I think I had. I wonder if it's related.
Yeah, that's my father, actually.
Yes, we realize it's the same name.
Great, then. Okay, all right. So, yes. Mr. John Charles, you mentioned uncertainty being a factor right now. Now, let me give you a little background of why that jumped out at me. I know someone, for example, who owns a restaurant, very small business in Arima, incidentally. And when the second lockdown happened, the first complaint that this person had to me is that they had just invested in a whole lot of stock, a very expensive meat and that kind of thing. And, they were really, really disappointed. And financially, the hit was, huge on them. And do you think that there's still this prevailing level of fear and uncertainty that's causing people now to hold back in terms of how much they are buying, how much they are stocking, how much they are planning for the future, even though we've received some assurances and so on with respect to, things not going to go back to that lockdown state? But do you think that businesses are still, do you think that there's just that confidence is just simply not there for people to start investing and growing and trying to grow their businesses?
That confidence is definitely not there. In terms of planning for short-term and purchasing more stock, they're very measured in that approach. Even for trying to get financing and loans, they definitely are not pursuing that, because just yesterday there were over 1,000 new cases. So in the back of their minds, they're thinking, well, next week, next month, things could go back. Things could revert to the low levels and we could get another lockdown. And that definitely is curtailing the amount of preparations that they engage to, which will, of course, slow down economic activity in the country on a whole.
Right. Thank you very much.
Ms. Lashmidian, yes. I do not want to forget Mr. Hussain or Mr. Edghill, who have been waiting.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Mr. Hussain was up first and he gave way to Ms. Lashmidian. Yes.
Madam Chair.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. I just want to respond to add, I do endorse everything that has been said by the fellow panelists this morning. But in addition to the issue with respect to operating post-lockdown and the termination of the SOE, with respect to business operations, we are still seeing people, or we have seen people who are actually changing their operating hours to cut costs as a cost-cutting mechanism. So to save the cost of salaries, they are opening an hour later and closing an hour earlier, because the traffic is actually significantly less. The buying power or the money circulating in the economy has significantly decreased. I also want to just touch on something that was mentioned based on the question that was asked with respect to investments of equipment or in stock. We have been given a heads up by the entertainment sector, whereby equipment that does have a time-sensitive usability, if you want to call it. As you know, technology changes and equipment expires in its functionality based on those changes in technology. And we've had several individuals who have invested heavily in equipment in preparation for whether it is a carnival or other entertainment opportunities that would have existed pre-COVID. And they are now in a position where, though they had to maintain their equipment throughout the process to keep it in good working order with no income coming in, they are now facing the fact of still having to pay for that equipment while the equipment is now facing expiration in terms of applicable use. So there are several other factors, and they have indicated also that they haven't gotten sufficient support from the banking sector, and also the fact that the grants have not been fully accessible to them as well. So I will leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hussain?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My question is to everyone on the panel. Can you give us an indication of whether or not, from your personal view and some feedback from your members, whether or not the state of emergency achieved its purpose? That's the first question. And the second question is in particular to Mr. Wormsley and Ms. Haddad from Tobago. Do you agree with the beaches, the opening hours for the beaches still being restricted, or do you agree that the beaches should not be restricted at all, the opening hours for the beaches?
I could respond to that question, at least the first part of it. Did the SOE achieve its objective? I would say yes, right? I believe the SOE was a mechanism that was utilized to really combat controlling what is happening in society and managing the pandemic. But with that said, I believe the intervals in which we were shut down was a little too long. And I think one of the challenges, and I think we're being faced with that challenge up to now, is pandemic fatigue. From my understanding, from speaking to nurses that reside in San Juan, a lot of them are fatigued from combating this pandemic for so long, and how they are working in terms of the extended hours. It's a similar perspective from business, right? In terms of uncertainty with regards to the lockdown and the SOE. You could have psychological fatigue as well, in terms of if you have a certain level of uncertainty of not knowing if it is you would collect a paycheck at the end of the month based on what is happening with regards to the spread. It is a psychological challenge and an HR challenge for businesses as well. So I would say it is twofold. Yes, the SOE achieved its objective. However, we have to look at what were the ramifications of keeping it for so long.
Mr. Scotland? Mr. Scotland, you no longer wish to speak? So your hand up. Any other member wish to comment on the state of emergency and its effectiveness?
Madam Chair, if I could just say quickly, yes, I do believe the SOE achieved the purpose of reducing or restricting the movement of the population during a time of spreading of the COVID virus. So I believe in that regard, it was a useful mechanism. However, I do agree that it was potentially extended for too long a period. Also, of course, border closures that have impacted other sectors in tourism and tour operators and yacht services and so on. So we do have other aspects to look at with respect to spin-offs from the SOE.
Madam Chair, I think I heard a question about the beaches. And from our perspective, we've seen a slight increase in traffic and occupancy with the fact that the beaches are open. People want to come because they want to go to the beach. They need to go to the bathe in the sea. I do feel that the 2 p.m. time is a little bit too early. I think it could be extended to nearer 4 p.m. And that would allow water sports and other activities to take place without the liming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I must say that background you have there is much too tempting, you know, that rolling seawater there. Ms. Haddad?
That's exactly why we need to remove the time factor, Madam Chair, because look, it's already tempting you where you're there. So to answer the beach question, I think the beaches need to be reopened at this stage. I don't even know that it should have a timeline. However, I would like to suggest that maybe we keep the containment of the alcohol consumption and the things that create the behavioral patterns that become unbecoming and therefore take away the actual purpose of the enjoyment and health benefits of the ocean and the properties around. So that is the question that was directly asked to both Mr. Wormsley and myself. And the first part of the question, which Mr. Roach kind of logged in, the SOE at the time, I want to say that I believe government would have made a decision in their best knowledge, their best state, understanding what was going on. Because to be fair, I don't think any one of us have the pandemic plan in our drawers and never wrote that business model. So to be fair, I think government made that decision trying to treat with what was in front of them. However, as we went along, not only there were too many uncertainties in terms of how we are going to operate. And that, having said that, I think we have come to a place where that needs to be more locked down, because as somebody else would have said on the panel, we cannot do proper forecasting for banking, for borrowing, for negotiating. That cannot happen under these conditions and this environment. So we need to probably make some take the bull by the horn decisions and move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Haddad. Member Scotland? You have...
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very kindly, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I want to pose this question to the participants. How can the government, in light of all that has been said, in light of all your experiences, how can the government further assist the business community relative to combating this, dealing with this pandemic? And secondly, does your various organization not support the government's vaccination drive? Those are my two questions.
Any takers? The floor is yours. Mr. Ramkisoon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Scotland, for posing those questions to us. With regards to the vaccination program, I believe all associations would be in support of having the vaccination program reach higher levels. I think all responsible business owners would have requested that the staff get vaccinated again. In the private sector, it's a little more difficult. So all we can do is ask and encourage, provide them with the information they may ask of us, and hopefully that helps to increase the numbers going along. But I don't think any association has an issue with supporting the vaccination program and trying to get more of the population vaccinated. With regards to some initiatives that the government maybe, well, I wouldn't say maybe, I think they can assist us with is the following. During one of the speeches from the Minister of Finance, he offered to reduce credit card interest by 50%. To date, this has not happened. And believe you, this would be a great assistance to all small and micro businesses for their credit cards to be at a lower interest rate. It would really, really help them. Secondly, small and micro enterprises, if it's possible, I think through NIDCO or some agencies, if we could do some interest-free loans based on the criteria of the business having their affairs in order, being paid up with their co-op tax and so on, because it has to have some level of requirements and oversight, and if they can be granted some interest-free loans to at least help stimulate the business, which would therefore help stimulate the economy and get things back to some form of normalcy. Additionally, if there's some way that we could assign some percentage of the available forex to small and micro, if it's 10% and we put it on a tier system, so if a business is considered small and micro, the micro businesses in the country has an ability to access 10% of the available forex. If they can't fully utilize the 10%, then the difference should go back to the bigger businesses. But at least make 10% available to us so that we too can help grow and build our businesses, because forex is becoming more and more challenging by the day. Also, I think small and micro businesses should not be paying commercial rates for electricity and internet and so on, because the usage is that of a household, sometimes even lower than that. And to be charged commercial rates for small and micro enterprise, I think is a little harsh. In this, even worse now in the pandemic. And finally, if BIR and NIB could waive penalties for late payments. The government needs to be understanding as well. I understand this is how the economy returns money to the government to further inject back into the system. But we also need to ease up on some of these harsh penalties to allow businesses to have a little late period, because we're trying. But if we could be given some leniency here on this, I think it would also assist. Thank you.
We've heard all your pleas, and I think you've represented your entity very well. Now, Mr. Sorias has been waiting, so I'll take Mr. Sorias and Mr. Rambarat. Following, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did an impact survey at the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association with approximately 479 people responding, business people responding. And we asked if moratorium was requested, were you successful? And 72% said no. Right? Another question, how critical to the immediate future of your business is financial assistance? And almost 70%, so 70% have a critical need for financial assistance. So, and most of our members are saying to us that the government assistance, for most of them, not accessible, sorry. And I want to say, the last question, the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association fully supports the government's vaccination drive. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rambarat, Member Rambarat.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I want to say first to the stakeholders who are before us, I had the opportunity many years ago to chair one of the largest business organizations in the country. I understand everything you have said, but I want to thank you for the very positive way you have approached this televised hearing this morning. It struck me that the contributions were, based on your experience, very heartfelt contributions and very positive contributions have been taken note. I want to congratulate you for that. It's been a difficult environment for all of us, but more particularly for you and for your stakeholders who have really borne the brunt of COVID. To Ms. Haddad in particular, I note the sentiments you express on things like the state of emergency. It's always easy to in the US they call it Monday morning quarterback, to reflect on it after it passes. But my very first contribution in the Senate on COVID, I said the only thing is certain about COVID is the uncertainty, and your views express that. I thank the member from Sawa, I believe, for highlighting the mental health issue, particularly with those in the health sector, but across the country nationally, and Prime Minister referenced that in his press conference last Saturday. I want to just say that at the last meeting, I asked some questions of the credit union movement. And the fact is that one of the issue that was the most pervasive issue in terms of the support offered to the business sector, small, medium, large credit unions, is the deficiency in registration, statutory obligations in organizations. There is a requirement that those who access the benefits, even on a minimum, must demonstrate some form of registration or being on the national grid in terms of business. And a lot of them failed on account of that. And the minister, I don't want to use the word water down, but did in fact water down some of the requirements to try to allow more persons in. And I would say, we don't know if we passed the worst of COVID yet. I don't want to express a view, but it might be a good time for all of us to revisit what was on offer, those who were deficient, the money that is still available, and the extent to which all your members who were not successful may be successful in still accessing those things, because I know from that last meeting, there was a lot of money left on the table. And you would see in the budget, the response of the Minister of Finance to that was to make particular support available for small and micro enterprise businesses to become compliant. And I would really don't like to see that. I wouldn't like to see that go to waste. I think that while we examine in the past in terms of the future, I think we should, as business organizations and as government, we should work together to make sure that maximum use is made of that benefit and the others which were made available in this fiscal year. I want to say to Mr. Ramkisoon, you made some very good contributions in specific suggestions in relation to small and micro. I particularly like your Forex suggestion, mainly because we've made Forex available to exporters, in particular through the Exim Bank. But it might be something that you wanted to raise as a group with Minister of Finance in relation to small and micro, who do in fact have Forex needs and may require assistance. I follow you on the utilities, yes. These are things that we really, as policymakers and as cabinet members and as legislators, we really look for you to provide these suggestions that we work through. And we get some good ones that come through, so that the waivers, the penalty, waivers on penalty and interest, you'd remember through BIR and companies registry and so on, that we've gone through 3 amnesties, I believe, on those. We've been able to collect significant amounts of money on them. And again, if you believe that a further waiver is required on penalties and interest, I think you should make the approach to the Honorable Minister of Finance on that. So I want to close by saying it's been a difficult time, particularly for you on your membership. I appreciate the positive way in which you have approached us today. I think there's work that we could do together, even in the face of uncertainty, so that we could in the context of what the Minister of Finance may still have unspent, we could really get it to your membership. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rambarat. I think you have got now the government's position very well, so that people understand. And thank you for recognizing the contribution of the officials here so far. Now I'll go to Mr. Emerson John Charles and then Ms. Haddad. and then Mr. Roach for their contributions.
Okay, well, just as Mr. Ramarat said, I agree with a lot and like a lot of the suggestions made by Mr. Ramkisoon. The only thing I would change though is that he said we should have zero interest loans. I think for the small and micro sector, there should be more grants actually, because as we said, there's so much uncertainty. Some of them may be wary and may not access any zero interest loans. My one suggestion, besides all of what has been said so far, is last month I was in Amsterdam, and in Amsterdam there's an organization called Startup Amsterdam, and its sole responsibility is to be a manager and support of SMEs in managing and accessing various organizations in their entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I think that for our SMEs, there's so much stress and with the lockdown, just on a normal basis, they are just trying to survive, focus on their business, that there may be various government initiatives and they just may not be aware because they may not read the newspapers as often, they may not see it on the news or on television. But if there was an organization where they can just go to just access what's going on every week or every month, they go to find what exactly is going on, that definitely could help support them and boost them, and could even provide a source of other services such as mentorship and things of that nature. But in Amsterdam, we have one of the best ecosystems in the world, and that type of initiative definitely will boost Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm wondering though, Mr. John Charles, whether your membership have accessed advice programs or webinars from the following state entities: Export TTT and National Entrepreneurship Development Companies. So in fact, there are entities there to assist businesses.
Yes, there are entities. Well, let me give a small example, which is outside of the realm of SAO, but still related. So, in terms of the outdoor restaurants, like at the Queen's Park Savannah, the head of that association he sells punches and things of that nature. And for a shock to be for him to tell me that he was not aware of the NEDCO grants. And I said, well, how could that be? Was on television. He said, well, I'm trying to survive here. And maybe before, NEDCO would have would have had boosts and things of that nature, but it's COVID. And most of NEDCO's workers are working from home. So if you try to call NEDCO during the state of emergency or even before that, we wouldn't get through with anyone because they're all working from home. So those type of challenges compounded. So he said, I just didn't know about the grant. And then for other persons who were aware of the grant, there was a backlog and a long waiting time to get any response, far less for the grant itself. So those are some considerations that have to be taken in.
Thank you very much. It's interesting that you raise that point, though, because working from home does not mean not being accessible to the public, as I understand it. That is it.
Chairman, that's not quite the real situation. Getting anything is super difficult. But let me get to the questions. The first one, the vaccine program support system. I want to share on this committee that at the beginning, 80% of the membership would have said that they weren't in support of driving persons without choice to vaccination and holding their jobs as the collateral to taking it. And when government made the decisions that they were going to put necessarily people's incomes next to the vaccination, we would have had a shift in terms of 70% now saying that they will go along. So I want to be clear that I'm not sure that that was support more than it represented people's, let me call it, their need to survive, and therefore made that decision. It was more financial one rather than a human one. And I think that is very much must be put on the table so that we understand where we are going, because you still have a very high hesitancy level on the island. So but however, the chamber as a whole did do a massive support both in Trinidad and even Tobago, where committees were formed. And we know that Trinidad and actually had a whole booth and financed the whole situation there. So I want to say that I think the support was one thing. The other thing is, how can the government support? Now, I am going to turn this whole thing upside down, because I'm saying so from the financial situation that we are accustomed to. Because we are not accustomed to pandemics, the financial situation as it stands does not and will never fix the situation. It doesn't matter how we pad it and adjust it and adapt it. It will not fix this. So I want to suggest some really out-of-the-box decisions. To start with, our financial sector would need, and in financial sector means credit unions, banks, whatever forms of lending agencies we have, need to be brought into the tables to discuss the non-traditional ways of delivering funding. We cannot, Minister Ramrat said one of the things are key. Whilst we, the private sector, need to register, and I agree with it, it's an ideal time for us to bring people into an information and data collecting part of it for registered people, so that after this, we can now line up our business community in a real way, a meaningful way, that we know what is happening with how many people are really in business and what we have as a community on not only the island, but as a country. Let me say that with the financial sector, the quantums that are being offered, either for interest-free or deferred loan payments, they are not enough based on, I don't know who did the numbers in terms of if you're doing a business for $1.something million and whatever, that $75,000 will help you. It is not going to work. Those numbers are not structurally, mathematically done in a meaningful way. And so I want to speak of, firstly, quantums. Secondly, this is not about just interest rates on, Madam Chair, there are a lot of distractions. I'm not good at these meetings when we have all this movement around. It really throws me off. Secondly, the financial aspect of it needs to be done in a government, private sector, meaning us, the business community, and C, the banking or financial institution and lending agencies. We need to come up with formulas which indicate that whatever people have as debt now can be put on hold in a moratorium state for people who require it for a period of, let us say we start with a 2-year period, and the new funding is given or access because people are not in a position to probably pay what their debt is now. And that continues to mount and climb interest, where one aspect of the scale is going to overpower the other eventually. Because if the income stays stagnant or doesn't climb, that debt plus interest keeps climbing. There's no stop to that figure. One is going to overpower and you're going to end up in a closed down situation. You're not going to be able to recover that at no cost, at any formula you use. So we need to do some really out of the box things. We need to stop where we are now, and new funding needs to be made available at much cheaper rates, or with formulas that say, just as they do in hire purchase, let's call it, where people don't pay for a particular time, and then they give you time to get back on your feet. Not only about the business getting back on their feet, but about the movement of people and our whole country being able to move again. I think our financial sector has a serious responsibility now to work us through this. I would have said it in April of 2020. And I do not know that it has been dealt with in a deep way. So I want to suggest that there are out-of-the-box things that if after this committee, I am asked to assist in terms of what formulas we can look at, I am willing to do so. I don't think this is the forum to drill into those things, but I think we need to look at formulas that are not in the books as we speak, those of central bank or those of any of the financial institutions that do the lending for us. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ada. We take note of all your wonderful suggestions. Mr. Edgel, could we hear from you, please, about what you posted so that in the chat, so that everybody will be able to take advantage of your suggestions?
Sure. I actually put it in the chat to avoid having to, just have everybody make their contributions at length. What I just wanted to mention here was relative to the Startup Amsterdam that was mentioned. The TTCSI was a facilitator of a Startup Chile mechanism that was afforded to us in Trinidad and Tobago. Unfortunately, one of the requirements would have been to have your representative establish an office in Chile for at least 1 year and maintain an office in Chile for the duration of the program thereafter. So the uptake was not very, very good. We approached the Ministry of Trade and Industry to look into or support us for a push for a startup TT, which would have done exactly the same. And the proof has been that with such programs, there's significant development and economic growth tied to it, inclusive of the attraction of foreign currency and foreign exchange. However, at the time, obviously, the state of the country with the revenues, limited revenue coming in from the oil and gas sector, there was insufficient funding to even consider the program. So it is something that I think is worthwhile having us revisit when the government is in a position to facilitate such funding. What I will say, though, is that the program's structures will usually result in a multiplied effect on the money that's actually invested by the government. So the money just needs to be allocated. The results and the returns will be significant, and it's not something that will just be an outlay or a grant given to businesses. The other point I made. Right, the fixed, as Ms. Haddad was mentioning about the level of grants. We've mentioned in the past as well that the grants that have been allocated for access to the businesses are not working because a grant for one business will not necessarily work for another in the fixed structure that it currently exists in. So, for example, a 20,000 grant from the government that was all that was available last year, for example, $20,000 is not even going to cover rent for some people. And my point here is that without looking at each individual business and assessing them for what type of assistance they need, whether it's loans or grants or what mix might be required for the success and recovery of that business, we need to have more of in other words, how much is going to be required for that particular business to recover, which might be much higher than $20,000. And with the $20,000 that's insufficient for a specific company, that is only going to fill a hole or handle covering part of a debt they may have and not do anything to spur recovery or further growth or recovery for that business in the economy.
Ms. Delcia Mohammed has been waiting for a while. I'll give you the floor and then we'll go on.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Just to reiterate what everyone has been saying about the grants, I just wanted to add my contribution in that, yes, it is not sufficient. I just want to make a quick reference into, if you look at the SME, the microloan has been available and the criteria that they have set out and the annual revenue ranges and the maximum loan that you are being granted, it is not sufficient what can $150,000 do with regards to a company that has an annual revenue of $600,000? And they're saying that's the maximum amount, so that you're not even guaranteed that amount. They can assess and give you $50,000. What is that going to do to help you? So I am just reiterating what everyone else is saying, what everyone else is thinking. We need to have a better system in place to help these companies to move forward, especially in the financial rut that everyone is in. It's no doubt about it that everyone here has suffered and will continue to suffer because we are far from over in this pandemic. I just also want to touch on the situation with regards to the tax that has been mentioned. While everyone was thankful for the amnesty that was granted by the government for the tax, it begs to differ that the amnesty was given in a period where everyone was suffering financially. So while people were willing to pay their taxes, it's not that the people and the government, it's not that the citizens and the business people did not want to pay their tax. It's just that sometimes they simply couldn't. They had to utilize the tax money to pay workers where they can to continue their businesses forward. So even when the amnesty was granted, it was still granted in a difficult time where people had to still make that choice. Do I pay my taxes or do I continue to provide for my workers, to keep my business forward, to keep myself afloat? And I think we need to have some sort of better support system in terms of the tax, because as I said, people are willing to be compliant. It's just sometimes it is difficult to meet within the government timelines. And that is a big challenge that I know we have, because we have to comply by the government deadlines. But when we have to get refunds, it is not so forthcoming. We have to wait years and years in most cases to get any refunds that are due to us. So I think the tax issue is something that definitely needs to be addressed for the business people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mohammed. Saroj?
Yes, thank you. All right, just to touch quickly on some of the questions that were asked. With regards to vaccination, Summer Business Association vaccinated approximately 2,000 persons from within our membership. And I think it is very important to note some of the observations that we made when we were attempting to do this. One is that we got it was very well participated simply because of the dialogue and the information, with us being very intimate with our membership and being able to kind of put their mind at ease in terms of participating. From our experience, one of the major hurdles in terms of getting vaccination up has to do with fear, right? And it is something that I would really like the Ministry of Health to pay attention to in terms of how do we market information, even utilizing bodies like business associations. How do we market the information to address directly the fears that people have? It may be something as simple as needles, overcoming the fear of needles. But it's something that is worth exploring. Because even during our vaccination program, we observe people coming to get vaccinated drunk, and that has a lot to do with fear. And I think it's something that it should be noted and addressed. I would also like to suggest, right, exploring the possibility of incentives to get people vaccinated, not only in the private sector but the public sector. We have to think out of the box and be creative. Maybe we do a housing lotto or some kind of thing to get people interested in becoming vaccinated, because now we kind of beyond the 2 shots now, when we now looking at booster shots, right? And we have to get creative to hold people interest in mind. On the part of financing, just a couple points to note. I think one of the issues with small and micro enterprises, we believe that this is a very important sector for employment. Unfortunately, with the downturn in the economy, a lot of the small and micro enterprises are scaling back in terms of employment. However, if it is that we are talking about financing to them, one of the major things that these small businesses depend on is foreign currency. And going through the traditional mechanism of trying to get it through the banks, there's an issue of scarcity and who gets priority. And very often, far too often, these businesses are not prioritized. Their business is just too small. And I would like to advocate to get the special state bodies and agencies that are there to lend services to these different segments, for them to get the relevant resources to deliver to these to this business segment. Even collaborating with the business associations, how do we deliver the resources to them? One of the things that we have to understand with small and micro enterprises is that the decision maker is very intimate with their business. And for a lot of them, it is actually making a decision on, do I sacrifice information? Do I sacrifice income to go and seek information and face bureaucracy, right? These are things that need to be addressed. Because, I mean, the arrangement for larger institutions like Exim Bank, that works very well for manufacturers. Why can't we do the same with NIDCO? I know they are not traditionally financial institutions, but if we are really serious about delivering service to this particular business segment, then we really have to get creative in terms of how do we deliver service to get them confident and inspired to survive the pandemic. Thank you.
I may seek some clarification from you. When you say that the Samoa business association got 2,000 people vaccinated, what do you mean by that?
Okay. In San Juan, we work very closely with TTMA. Actually, TTMA is in our jurisdiction, and we collaborated with them, right, at the Diwali Nagar site, and we would have encouraged our membership to come down. We would have facilitated it, man the facilities and walk them through, talk to them, right, persuade them. And even where some businesses had staff, in terms of a significant number of them not willing to get vaccinated, we would have gone into these businesses and had a chat with their employees, right? But again, it's about getting the adequate resources, whether it be in information or financial, whether it be trying to alleviate the major problems in terms of overcoming the fears or incentives. That is the role that we are there to fill. We really want to serve our membership, but we want the government and the state agencies to work with us to deliver better service to our membership.
What incentives?
Well, I would have mentioned one in terms of a lottery program, maybe for housing allocation. I don't know. We have to be creative, but I know there are products that the government can offer that could get people excited about participating in the program.
Sorry, excuse me. Not what the government can offer. I'm asking you specifically because you said you mentioned incentive. What did you all do? Not what the government should be doing.
Well, we didn't use any incentives at the time. What we primarily relied on would have been explaining and using moral persuasion in terms of giving as much information as we can, right? So that is what we did. It takes a lot of time, a lot of finessing. Sometimes the conversations, you have to have conversations 2-3 times to really get people into it. Because let's face it, people have a lot of questions, right? Because we're living in an information age where information is at the tip of your fingers, and some of the questions that you have to answer and deal with, it could be a bit much. So that is why I'm now pleading for some better information delivery from the government in terms of getting it to stakeholders like us, in terms of how do we persuade and market the information in such a way that we can achieve an objective of alleviating fears.
Mr. Mike Watson, you've been waiting for a while.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to just touch the financial again and agree with Ms. Haddad that we need to think outside the box. In December 2017, there was a reintroduction of the government guarantee program. And this was a program that basically you could take an existing loan, existing finance, add more finance to do whatever you would need to do with it, upgrade or whatever working capital you need. And what would happen is that the government would pay a percentage of the interest, and the bank, you would pay the bank the difference. I think if this could be re-looked at, there was certainly several $100 million set aside for this program. I don't know where it is now, but I've been trying with this program personally for 4 years and have accessed everything I needed to do, but the bank will not look at it in this current economic climate. But I think it's something that if we can re-look at the government guarantee program, I think it might answer a lot of these other questions and relieve the grant even. We don't need the grant. We need restructured financing or financing that can be afforded. This way, the government isn't just giving out money, it's actually getting money back using that grant. So I really feel that this is something, there isn't time now to go into the detail, but it's something that needs to be re-looked at and rethought through with less stipulations and a little bit more out-of-the-box thinking, as Ms. Haddad has spoken about. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call on Ms. Lashmidia and then Ms. Haddad, I want you all to be thinking also about the Safe Zone initiative. Has it resulted in a major boost in sales among your membership? Has it changed the way that your membership operate? And what are the challenges businesses have encountered while it's operating as a safe zone? Of course, those of you who have been, who are. Ms. Media.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy for all of these suggestions about financing and so on. I think this is a very useful conversation, but I just want to bring it back a little bit into, we are looking at the impact and how things would have happened, as well as taking suggestions for going forward. Specifically, a lot of people have spoken about grants and accessing grants and so on. And I take the point and I agree that grants are really perhaps short term, and to survive now going forward, you need something more than grants. But I want to ask specifically about a grant that we had a discussion about at our last public hearing, and that's the entrepreneurial relief grants coming out of NEDCO. That grant was really meant to assist small and micro entrepreneurs. We heard a lot about the criteria and so on from the perspective of those managing the grant, but I wanted to hear about the experiences from the business associations and their members with respect to this grant. Do you have any information on, how many of your members may have accessed that specific grant, the entrepreneurial relief grant, and a little bit about the experience, if you could share with us in accessing that particular one? Anyone can go first. Mr. John Giles, perhaps, if you.
Okay, well, I don't have the exact figures in terms of percentage, but I know that for many persons who were waiting to access that grant, there seemed to have been a backlog, and there was not a lot. They couldn't get feedback as to where the application had progressed, when they will actually get it, and some people actually remember in the micro and small business space. By definition, the income is not a lot. So many of them had applied for, I think it was a $5,000 grant from the Ministry of Social Development or something along, or the Ministry of Finance, I can't remember exactly. And some of them had applied for that $5,000 grant. And after they applied for that, the NEDCO grant came out, and they were automatically excluded from accessing the NEDCO grant. So that was one of the criteria. So a lot of them would have preferred that the NEDCO grant had come out first, or they had to apply for the 30,000 instead of just excluding themselves to the $5,000 grants. So those were some of the complaints that I heard from that particular target market.
Thanks.
Mr. Ramkisoon?
Sure. So with regards to the NEDCO grants, the information required is a little burdensome for some small and micro enterprises. They requested data that a lot of them would not have had. They requested it also in soft copies to be scanned and sent to them because they're working from home. So in that regard, not having a physical drop-off box or anything like that, some people just could not access it because they didn't know how to scan all these documents and send it. The process has been backlogged. I can safely say, agree with Mr. Charles that while people applied, they don't know where the applications stand to date. They don't know how far along in the process they have reached and if they have even qualified. Some people still missing documents to submit to NEDCO because the requirements are, again, a little strenuous for small and micro. I understand the initiative by the government to try and get them to register, but there had to be some other means of our business being able to justify that it was a business before. And then NEDCO should partner with the Ministry of Legal Affairs to get the person registered while it's going on. But to just exclude you because you didn't have a registration certificate, or they could prove that, hey, I'm making purchases from these companies and I can show you my physical location where I was paying rent. At this time, there should have been some sort of connection between NEDCO and the Ministry of Legal Affairs so that when the person applies, you can say, okay, you didn't have your registration certificates. This is what you need to do, but we'll still prepare your loan in the interim. And then when you get those certificates, it will come and then we'll be able to finalize the loan. But to just say, well, you don't have that and then strike you off the list is a little harsh, especially in COVID times. So that was the issue with the NEDCO loans in my perspective.
Thank you. Ms. Haddad, say something.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I want to do is answer your question as well, which you asked about the safe zone. The safe zones, while it is an initiative, the safe zones have its own complications in terms of persons as a family are not able to go out because their children under a particular age who are unvaccinated cannot participate in that sharing at a restaurant or what we can call a safe zone. Also, because we have mixed families of persons who are vaccinated, not vaccinated, people are cautious. So you find that even that type of business, I have to tell you, they are not seeing any benefit from that in any meaningful way. And many persons are now worried about the fact that they bought into the Safe Zone initiative and it's absolutely not working for them. I did put up on the chat, and I would like the persons to really take a look at Unheard on YouTube, where the chief of Israeli vaccines have said that they have made mistakes and they have delivered the most vaccines in the world right now to their nation. And they are speaking about all the different things that they have now come to reality with. So the Safe Zone initiative is not bearing fruit as expected. And to Mr. Roach's wanting to insensitize people to get vaccinated, I want to say that the population in many instances thinks that's an insult to their choice of health. And I think it really will not go down well. It didn't go down in the past. If we had understood what happened with free pizzas and free KFCs, it did not go well. So please let us be cautious what we are starting to regurgitate, which didn't work. And to Ms. Lakshmi Dial's question on what was it, Ms. Lakshmi Dial? I just
NEDCO and the entrepreneurial relief grants and the experience.
What I say is we have what you call grant professionals. We have people who have been in our system and continue pursuing that form of what they call business, and they are the grant professionals. So they know how to apply for grants and get grants, and they have been beneficiaries for years through different formats. And that's why I'm saying that the formula we have now is not the one to look, because there were many persons who genuinely now need to be supported for this entire economy to get turning its wheels again. And therefore, they didn't know how to tumble the NEDCOs or to tumble around whatever was in our way in terms of getting assistance. So I just want to say that the people who benefited may not even been people who were really needing or entitled, because they maybe had a grant business to start with and continue to be grant professionals. That's my contribution there.
Well, you have coined quite a term there. And maybe you should copyright it. Mr. Rambarat, I hand the floor over to you. Mr. Rambarat, are you hearing?
Yes, I thank Ms. Haddad.
You recovered? We're recovering from Ms. Haddad.
No, I thank her. I never thought I would thank her twice in one day, but I thank her for that description, because you're right that we have to face that. That is the reality. In some aspects, in food card and everything, there are people who are well equipped to access these things. But I just want to go back to what my friend from Sawa said, and what I said earlier. The fact is that we were operating in a particular environment where you may not have been able to fully comply. There were other issues back to the earlier submission in relation to the amnesty and being able to comply and take advantage of that. But I repeat what I said earlier. I understand that there is the opportunity for further conversation and specific conversations with the Minister of Finance in respect of, the government as a whole, in respect of those unfulfilled claims, or those who were not fully compliant, who may now be better positioned to do it. Because if the need existed at that time and it was a real need, then the need logically still exists. It was never the intention of the government to use policy or to use a precondition to exclude people. The intention was to have the support reach those who really needed it. And even as MPs and politicians on the whole, we have our own difficulty in sifting out sometimes the professional food card applicants from the ones who have the genuine need. And I think we should put together that information again. NEDCO was before us, and we know that they had their challenges and there were barriers. And I think the common purpose of the government is to make the support available to those who need it. And collectively, I think we should focus on how we do that in terms of what has gone. And I repeat what I said earlier in terms of what lies ahead of us. I just want to ask you one thing as a group, if you could just indicate, what have you done as as organizations, what specific, things you have done in order to provide support to your membership and your communities.
Thank you, Mr. Rambrat. I haven't heard Mr. Gonzalez for some time, so I will give him preference over those who have heard before. I'll come back to you, Mr. Rambrat.
Thank you very much, Chair, for recognizing me. And my question was very much in alignment with the comments by my colleague, Minister Rambrat, but I just want to also register my appreciation for all the members of the business community here. I think your contributions have been very, very mature. I admire the way in which you responded to the question by member Saddam Hussein when you were asked whether or not the state of emergency was a success. I thought that your responses were very much mature, and I want to commend you for all the mature contributions and recommendations that you have been making to this committee. I have been taking careful notes, and I strongly believe that coming out of these deliberations, we'll be able to put together, a very strong report, because we're having a greater insight into the operations of small and micro enterprises in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, Mr. Sudesh Ramkissoon spoke about some challenges faced by members regarding the application for support from NETCO. And in his view, to a great extent, the application process was a bit rigid, and it prevented a lot of his members from accessing the support that the government was hoping to give to some of these members. But we would also recall, Chair, that when NETCO was present on the last occasion, NETCO was placed under intense scrutiny for its flexibility in providing support. And so much so that, there were a lot of strong suggestions that many people who did not qualify for the grants received the grants, and that NETCO should examine its process to ensure that persons and businesses that require the grant get the grant. So we are always, there are always arguments to, pros and cons, and this is a very tightrope. Ms. Diane Haddad, she made a very interesting point, and I think I heard the Prime Minister said it. No one was prepared for a pandemic, and it was trial and error as we go along, and nothing that we did was perfect, and it was all geared towards trying to manage in very difficult circumstances in the public interest. What we have recognized in similar types of discussion, especially as it relates to the small and micro enterprises sector, is that that sector is very much unregulated. It exposed the gap. It exposed, the fact that a lot of these organizations and businesses, they operate under the radar, and therefore, in making application for support from the government, they could not have provided some of the basic things that some of the more established businesses would have been able to provide. So I am asking the representative organizations that, to look at this opportunity to bring your members into the formal sector, because that, in doing so and giving them the necessary support, the government has to come on board as well, because people often talk about challenges they face with the Ministry of the Attorney General, at the Income Tax Division, etc. But we all have to come together and look at our respective processes to ensure that we can bring everyone into the formal sector, so that when situations like these arise in the future, the challenges that we face will no longer be, right? In a recent contribution in Parliament, I can't remember the name of the bill, I made the point that there was a recent study, I think a 2017 study, that suggested that the informal economy in Trinidad and Tobago is worth somewhere around $15 billion. So, and that is very significant. And that is the reason why we are hearing some of the complaints that we are hearing today, that so many of the businesses, the small businesses, could not satisfy some of the basic requirements for assistance. So we are faced with a very difficult situation. And I think all of us, it is in our collective interest to examine the challenges that we all face and that we work collaboratively to be able to address some of those challenges. And I want to ask the representatives present here today that you work with your members to bring them into the formal sector so that they can access the support that the state is offering.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to give the floor to someone who's been having challenges with her device, I believe, and we haven't heard from her, Giselle Lawrence. So I'm giving you the floor now.
Thank you.
I'm just asking, before this is not directed to you, but I'm asking members, officials, please try and, keep your statements short, because soon we'll be losing people to go into the parliament. And we would hate to think that you have some burning and very important contribution to make and we are unable to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the Minister Ambarat's this question about what the Chamber has been doing for their members, what we have done is that we've realized, the Semi-Grande Chamber of Commerce, we've realized that a lot of members are unaware of government initiatives. So we've created WhatsApp groups. We've been using Facebook because a lot of people are online now. And we're trying to put that information into the social media sphere with respect to the grants and all these other initiatives. We've also held a lot of webinars as well to our members and the general public so that they too can get some information, for instance, about the property tax or business, how to run businesses and all these sort of things. We held a membership drive as well recently, where we've been calling individual businesses, and while doing so, they were able to raise their concerns and suggestions with us. We've also been partnering with the Eastern Regional Health Authority to increase the vaccination drive throughout the Eastern region of Trinidad. We've written countless times to the Semi-Grande Regional Corporation. We've written to the MP to try to get meetings with them to discuss these concerns, and we're hoping that we would be able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I see some hands are up, but I'd like everybody to address their minds to what happened with the Port Authorities and Customs Excise Division during the period, and what the measures adopted, were they impactful? And do you think there are any urgent adjustments in port operations that can alleviate the delays in clearing of freight and goods? And how have businesses in your membership responded to these shipping and freight challenges? So in addition to what you're about to say, if you could address what's happening at the port and what you would like to see happen in the port and customs during the course of your presentations. So Mr. Ramkisoon, please.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. So a quick word on the safe zones and a recommendation. I'm glad that the Minister of Health and MP Marvin Gonzalez is here as well. Quick suggestion. I believe that the country had a health card system in place whereby that card would have shown all of your health issues together with your blood type and so on. I don't know the status of the program, but if that program could be resurrected to also include your vaccination status, I think it would help a lot with the safe zones, because then we can just have it on a digital card, a biometric card, so that a person can swipe in the business and automatically they will know if he's vaccinated or not. And simplify that process as opposed to having to walk with this card, and because it's a little bulky as well, and take it out of a package to give it to the people. People see that as a hassle, but going and swiping a card through a scanner may simplify the process. And there is an existing framework already in place. So if we could just tie that through a digital process, it may make that necessary requirement easier and help businesses as well. Some food for thought through the digitization process. With regards to shipping on the port, this is a very ticklish matter in the sense that shipping costs across the world has increased. The cost to pack a container now has increased, and that is not something that we can do something about. What the government can help us with is helping us to lower the cost to clear the container or for going back for a short period of time, just so that so much of the increase in cost is not passed on to the customer, and that we can work some sort of arrangement on with that. With regard to the operations on the port, I also know that's a challenge because, again, you have to operate in a safe manner. That in itself slows things down, but it's, again, protection of somebody's life. And I don't know what other measures could be put in place in the port to make it faster. I know that under the current ordinances, it makes it more difficult for the port to operate. Everything is going to take longer. If there's a streamlined operation where we can upload documents online to try and get it approved from before, maybe that's a suggestion. And have a better appointment system to clear the containers and to get this stuff off the port. Maybe that's something that, if it is not in place, is something that should be in place. A proper appointment system where you upload the documents 4 days before your container come in, and you try and work out all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I give the floor to Mr. Rambarat, I'd just like to ask you to focus for me on the next question on the rate of infection. What effect has it had on your business? What impact has it had? You know, what were your concerns about the safety of staff interaction with clients? And were there, in fact, depressed sales due to the current rate of infection? So how is that rate affecting you in your business? Mr. Rambarat, over to you. I know your business is different.
Suddenly, sorry, Madam Chair, my hand remained up, so I'll give way to another member.
See, so I am sorry too, and we will go to Mr. Ramkissoon, is it? Haddad?
Madam Chair, I would like if you can just repeat your question just now, and then I will respond, because there were a couple of things. And Mr. Wong had a contribution that he wanted to make. So I would allow Mr. Wong, but if you can repeat the question, please, because I didn't get to write.
I didn't see Mr. Wong hand up. All right. No, I was asking about the rate of infection, the COVID-19 virus, its impact on your staff attendance. What was your concern about the safety of staff interaction with clients at physical locations and depressed sales due to the current rate of infections? To what extent is your membership concerned about the depressed sales due to the current rate of infections? Floor is yours, Mr. Wong. No?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am a little confused, quite honestly, that maybe I'm not living in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't understand. But, or maybe I'm not intellectual enough to see the same things you all are seeing. No, I don't think any of the SOE curfew or any of the COVID measures done by the government have succeeded in anything, except to bring pain and suffering to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I accept that there were efforts made and the things were put in place to stop all of the measures, masks included, vaccines and everything else, are designed to help reduce the strain on the healthcare system. And coming out of the SOE and the curfews, we are now well over whatever the numbers that Mr. Hines and all those fine people put out every Saturday afternoon. So then we didn't achieve anything, because if it gets worse, then it's not achieving anything. And at the end of the day, I remember, because on April the 6th was a day that I was celebrating something, that we couldn't go to the beach because we had 80 people or 100 people in the hospital. Then we got to 400 people and it got worse. Today we have how many thousands in the people in the hospital? To me, that says it's worse. It's not getting any better, and whatever we tried was not successful. So I'm not sure that we're there with that. That's that point. On the discussions that we're having right now, the people that I represent don't have credit cards, don't have employees, but do have bank accounts. And to touch on the venture capital, I'm helping two people apply to venture capital, and twice, each of them have come to supply that they need to help submit, they need to scan in their bank statements to continue the application. And I mean, my first question is, did you not submit your 3 recent bank statements 6 months ago? Yeah, but like they lost them and they want me to resend them. And when I resend them, they're old now, so I have to find 3 new ones and send them again. And getting bank statements from banks these days can be painful because they all do it online and you have to have them to download and whatever. So that is a couple of the things that I mean, that's been burning in my head about all of what's going on. We need to look at cash flows for people. A lot of things are out of our control. The shipping, the pricing, the manufacturing, and wherever it's been manufactured and whatever else, we don't have any control over that. And those have all impacted business all year long. So I buy something, I sell it with a 25% markup, and when I go back to buy it, it's raised 15%. You mean we all understand what's that just done with your entire working capital system, right? It eliminates your capital system. You can't survive. You are slowly but surely running a negative cash flow. And we've gone through price increases all of last year. And we are facing, I have 5 emails already for the week with 3 suppliers raising over 1,000 items on my inventory list. So it's coming down the line again. So when I go to repurchase, I need to find money. All the money, the sales I'm doing this month, not going to help me buy back goods for next month. I have to find more money to buy it back. And that's what's happening to all of these micro enterprises and these business people. It was mentioned earlier, people who prepared to sell the next day, as of midnight tonight, everything you have torn out, all the stocks you have on a pallet waiting to sell Monday, no, it won't be sold. It will going to expire and rotten. And those things have happened to people. And that's where it's going. I need the government to tell me and give me something. I don't believe that the good doctors are pulling numbers out of our hat and saying, okay, this is closed down, this should open back up, we could have a carnival, we could do this. I need the government to be sure-footed, sure-handed and say, look, if we reach 1,000 people in the hospital, we need to lock it down. Okay? Once we have less than 600 people in the hospital and the healthcare system is robust, we can open back up fully and set out lines that I can understand and I can see. Because I see the numbers every night, it comes up on the news, whichever news channel you watch, right? 600, well, last night 1,063 with 19 deaths. We see it. Then I can understand what's happening. Maybe the people, the public can now respond to doing that. So, and the last thing about the most recent question asked, Madam Chair, because we don't understand how you have to quarantine and isolate, if I get infected and I isolate, does my wife and my other people in my small and micro business, do they have to isolate too? Which means my micro business is now shut down because it's only me and my wife working, or me and my son, or whoever it is. And then how do you kick that down the road if you do have employees? And how long does it work? Because if I'm infected today and my other family member or worker who I might have doesn't prove positive until 8 days from now, because we can't get a test done for another whatever days, it costs $1,000 and I can't afford to send my son or wife for somebody for a test. How long do I end up being locked down for? Because I'm shut down. So those things, without information, without proper process and procedure, we don't know. Yes, big corporations will send 20 people and spend $20,000 at PCR in Scarborough in Cromwell Airport and not have a problem with it. Small micro businesses not going to afford that. Okay? Especially if the grant only come out to $5,000 and they need to test 6, 7, 8 times for the year. It is no helping. Thank you very much. That's all for now.
Thank you very much. I hear your passion. Mr. Rambara? Why, Mr.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm about to pass you.
No, Mr. Wong brought me brought me alive there. And I appreciate his frankness and his delivery and so on, but it is more emotional and factual or scientific. The fact is, I would just respond to the second part first. The arrangements in terms of quarantine and in terms of how many days in quarantine and isolation and so on, those have not been fixed. Across the world, it has not been fixed. If you look, for example, over the Christmas period in Quebec, for example, where you have 100,000 health workers, 40,000 were COVID positive. And Quebec took a decision that COVID positive health workers could return to work once they were working with COVID positive patients, and in other provinces of Canada, they followed suit. And that is because they were striking the balance between the risk of having a COVID positive health worker to the risk of having absolutely no health worker supporting COVID patients. So this thing has been dynamic. It has, in a sense, been led by the WHO. We've been supported by WHO, PAHO, and other agencies. The technical people have been doing their job. It's not fixed or cast in stone, and the policies and processes, procedures have varied, and it's really very important that people keep up to date, so that if you want to know what is happening, I understand it is sometimes very difficult to grasp everything. I have difficulties too. Even the regulations can prove to be a little problematic, and I understand your situation. But the thing is, it has to do with the dynamic nature of COVID and the response to COVID. The first part of it, in terms of the lockdown and so on, I mean, you are entitled to your view, but from where I sit, the state of emergency was absolutely required. In fact, my own view is that we should have kept the curfew hours for much longer. But that's from a public safety point of view. But the curfew was really reduced, removed on account of getting business back to work again. And you're entitled to your views. But I think that the measures that were taken were critical. It is not in a vacuum. None of us prepared or expected Omicron. We were fighting Delta. Omicron came. The world was taken by surprise by Omicron. You see what happened in the US. You see what happened in Canada, in UK, and you see the response of the UK when the numbers dropped dramatically. And I know your situation. I appreciate what you've gone through. But in out of respect for the technical people who have provided advice, I don't think we should just cast away the advice as being absurd or unnecessary or anything like that.
Thank you very much. And if I may point out, though, that this is an inquiry into the impact of COVID-19 on the micro and small enterprises sector. This is not a forum to be defending government's policies or to
Secretariat, I think we lost the chair. She might be frozen.
Yeah, I think so. I was wondering if it was just me.
No. We all, I think.
She was making a very good statement.
Yes, she was in the middle of making a good point. I don't know if there's anyone there at the Parliament that could assist and perhaps refresh on. Secretary, in the meantime, could I ask a question, just briefly, coming back to some of our issues while the chair reconnects, so that we don't waste the time? I know that some members are about to leave to go to the Parliament. Well, I will just ask my question.
Hi, member. Good morning.
Hi. Yeah, Tarian. Hi, how are you going? Could I just get back to some of the questions that we had intended to ask while Chair is reconnecting, and then I can give way when she does?
Sure. It's just for the Vice Chairman to continue proceedings in the interim.
Sure. Which would be Mr. Rambarat, I think?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Vice Chair. Okay, so just while we're waiting on the chairman to come back, tell us a little bit about how your members have embarked on like innovation. Tell us a little bit about the resilience. What steps, because people have tried lots of different things. Somebody mentioned the online businesses, curbside delivery for restaurants that didn't do it before. And we know a lot about those things. But was there anything in particular that you think, and you can give us some examples of things that worked particularly well for some of your members to basically adapt to the environment that COVID has presented? Particularly, I'm interested in the cost factor of operating as a safe zone as well. You know, how have businesses been able to absorb that cost, remain competitive? What are some of the things that you have done and how they've become, innovative, or how they've adapted to that? If you could give us some examples from any of your organizations. I'll ask Semi-Grande. Anybody from Semi-Grande business? Oh, okay. I see Mr. John Charles has his hand up, or Mr. Sam. Either of you?
Mr. Charles can give me, sure.
Hi.
Go ahead,
Mr. Charles.
I had my hand up to make a comment on the customs question.
Oh,
but in terms of before I even go into what innovations people have gotten into, I just like to make a little comment. So the president and I have our masters in business development and innovation management, actually, and we noted that Korea has an innovation grants going on right now through IDB loan, but that grant is looking for organizations that want to scale up. And to me, the criteria that they have expressed, though it is quite noteworthy, it excludes a lot of micro and small businesses at this point in time, who also don't even have they may not even have the skill set to even create prototypes. Right. So that's just my one point on innovation on a whole. I see a lot of people have tried to be in this sector, try to be innovative. Because of the high rents, they try to go to a new business model where people could order on social media, and they use TT Post to deliver packages for them. A lot of them have tried that by force. Some people try to if people doing makeup, for example, they try to do tutorials online to access a new market. But the issue with a lot of the micro and small businesses on a whole is that many of them don't have competitive advantages. And while there's a rush to go into a new realm, a lot of that, they're not the only ones. So the sustainability of that and competition is pretty tough for them.
Okay, members and stakeholders, I must apologize to the chairman. Just as she was about to rule me offside, the internet started to give trouble. So,
Clarence, I feel you know.
It's amazing coincidence.
Controlling the communications.
It is so very difficult to catch me offside. But anyway, I apologize for that. Some of our, as you know, our members from the House would have to leave. So I want to give you the opportunity to provide your closing statements. I also want to say to you that the committee continues its work, so you can make any further submission you wish to in writing. We would appreciate that. And I want to invite you to make your closing statements. I want to thank you for a very active participation and for being frank and open in your views, and very respectful also. I want to start with Mr. Preston Sam. He's very vocal on Facebook in terms of his analysis and representation of the Semi-Grande Chamber, but I haven't heard a lot from him today. So I'm going to give him to bring in the views from the East, and then we will take the closing comments from the other stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rambarat. And I will continue to share my views on Facebook, and I'm happy to know that you are actually listening and reading these views. I had my hand up a little while because I'm just concerned, and I just want to add to my closing statements. Pandemic leave. There is not much information about pandemic leave to the business association or the business members. And, a recent complaint from one of our members is that persons are actually taking advantage of the fact that they are getting symptoms and going to the hospital, taking a swab and waiting 14 days to get a result. And of course, they definitely cannot come back to the workplace within that time until they get their results. So I am hoping that the Ministry of Health can actually look at the time for getting the results back to the employee. And because it's very unfortunate and it's another cost factor for the employer to be handling, paying a salary or even, the fact is that we don't even understand what is the pandemic leave. The information is not very available. It's not readily available to the employers, and it poses a serious problem. So I hope that something could come out of this and we can actually start to get more information on pandemic leave and how it applies, especially to the small and micro businesses. And in closing, I just want to say again, thank you from the Semi-Grande Chamber for having us here today. And we look forward to a positive response. And I want to thank all of you all for your comments and your responses. Thank you to the committee. And you all have a night.
Thank you very much, Chairman Sam. That was a very good observation. Even as ministers and in ministries, we face it, especially with initially, it was based on the tracer list. So anybody on the tracer list goes into quarantine. And then as the numbers grew, not everybody would have gotten an order from the CMO, but out of precaution, they were off. And then some people were actually vying to get on people's tracer lists. So and then around the world, you saw first in the US, the CDC reduced the time to 5 days, very controversial. And I appreciate that particular contribution because it especially in small and medium and micro businesses too, it really creates a problem if you're dependent on two workers and both are off. So I really appreciate that valid contribution. So I turn to the other stakeholders, Ms. Haddad, followed by Mr. Rankison.
Thank you, Minister. The chairman at the time had asked a question about the rate of infection for COVID-19. Our concerns as the business community was in terms of safety of staff at physical locations and the depressed sales, but none of us got an opportunity to comment on that. So if you would allow me, I would like to say something there before I close.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
So on just to put the leave, I want to say that like everything else, we get smart and people do abuse anything in this country that they can do. So the leave issue, we need to lock down what is the leave, because also these businesses cannot afford the financial aspect of paying for those people while off on leave. That is just a no-no in terms of finance. The rate of infection and our concerns, you had persons who took different approaches. If you, the business owner, was in that fear mode yourself, then clearly that is what you would have passed on to your staff and family members. That would have been what the energy would have been around your entire environment. So just to say, in my case, and I'm throwing an out of the box here again, there was none of that around my environment. I called meetings every morning with my staff. I gave them booster talks. We went through this in terms of a spiritual level, the physical level, and the material in terms of information, and that they must now channel it at a different level spiritually to come through this. And we held those sessions every morning. We said prayers. We did things like that in order, because we are in the food environment. So we were considered to be out there all the time. And then you will know in Tobago's affair, we have to go back to work in the night. So we actually had passes and had to be on the road in the night to receive goods from the Port Authority. So we were working day and night. It was normal for us. And having said that, I am into vibrational medicines, and I did get and was paying for and treating my staff. And we really had for 19 months, no problems. However, when they started to go and take the vaccines, I started to have a problem with people falling ill and getting different side effects and so. And that started to cause another position of fear because they were now worried about effects on their health. And I'm saying that because this is real. This is not a story. And whether they were going out to the business community in terms of servicing them, it all came down to we are not giving up. We are not fighting COVID. That word in itself is creating another nightmare. We are not fighting COVID. We are going along because we have a duty to serve the people of the country because food is a necessity at this time, of course, like always, and we are an essential part of delivering to mankind. And I took that approach, and I have to tell you, I have had a robust output from my staff. I don't think it was ever better before. I wished we could keep that mood. And that worked for me in my environment. So the depressed sales, it did not help sales. We did have very depressed sales. It's terrible. And therefore, the carrying of that cost is phenomenal and cannot be sustained. So I will tell you, decisions were taken that it would be no loan payments or no tax payments, but don't send anybody home. I needed to carry my role and responsibility as a business owner because I felt I was the head of the matriarch of that business and the matriarch of those people in front of me. And therefore, those persons I felt I was responsible for and could not put them through any more distress by taking away their little income from them, whatever that might have meant to them on a daily basis. So I just want to put that out there. And the other thing is I would like to say that the Chamber wishes to thank you all for having recognized us and having us as a part of this. And Minister, I'm so happy it's you I'm now interacting with as the acting chairman. I would have put it up for you. I do give true and balanced contributions in anything I participate in. And because I think without that, now sometimes from a political standpoint, we take it personally. But if we were to take the information in the right light, I don't think it would be considered negative. Thank you all very much, both you and the opposition and their contributions, because I think this really is about the people of our nation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And I'm pleased to say that our chairman has returned. So, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rambarat. And I would like to endorse the fact that you had nothing to do with what happened just now.
Absolutely not. But
absolutely nothing. You are completely innocent.
It might have been the vibrational medicine that Ms. Haddad brought with her.
It is called divine order, Minister. Divine order took place there. Thank you.
I do believe we are at the stage of closing remarks from the officials. So now can we have from Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Service Industries, and we want it short and sweet. So who is taking? Mr. Edgel, is it?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the humor as well. It's very much appreciated under these circumstances. I just want to say on behalf of the TTCSI that we do appreciate being included in these discussions. We want to thank the government for the initiative in doing so. Thank the government and the ministries involved in helping us through this pandemic situation. Although we all may see different versions of how what is being done is impacting us and in a favorable or negative way, we do appreciate the efforts being made. We do want our voices to be heard and our recommendations to be given serious consideration. We have several sectors that are still not allowed to operate under the services sector, like the tour operators and some of the other tourist-based organizations and entertainment. So we need to have those things looked at. So again, thank you very much. Keeping it short and sweet. I have put comments in the group chat as well for your consideration to make it easy. So we look forward to further collaboration. Thank you so much and have a good day, and everybody stay safe.
Thank you. Arima Business Association.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank you all for giving the Arima Business Association the opportunity to be part of this. We are glad to voice the concerns of our members and the people of Arima. I would like to express some sentiments that Ms. Haddad expressed regarding small and micro businesses, and the fact that a lot of the staff tend to be long-serving staff, and I would really like to thank all businesses that were able to keep as much staff on board and to keep them engaged, and however you manage to keep them afloat financially, the business community appreciates that. A quick suggestion to the government to help each of the areas across the country get back on their feet would be some diversification. Arima would gladly appreciate some government buildings in Arima, send down the Ministry of Sport and the Ministry of Agriculture. Of food from your restaurants and so on. So I will also send any other suggestions I have in the group via the chat, and I thank you all for giving us this opportunity. Have a good day, everyone. Stay safe.
Samo Business Association.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to thank you and your committee for the invitation to participate. We did hear a lot of good contributions, and we hope that the feedback that has been given is taken into consideration and really becomes fruitful, right? We would like to encourage the Parliament and the government to continue engaging business associations in providing information and resources to our membership, as well as bringing feedback to them to represent our membership properly. So thank you, and we look forward to further engagements.
That was short and sweet. Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comment, pre-COVID, we had 10 dive shops in Tobago, and we're now down to 2 dive shops. We had approximately 111 restaurants. We're down to 68 restaurants. And one of the things they asked me to make representations for them is with the SME loan, there's one criteria they're having problems with. That's you cannot be 120 days in arrears of your existing loans. But I believe if your business is closed, you will go into 120 days in arrears of your loan. So I hope the government look at this and come up with some plan to help these business owners so they can access the SME loans. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Semi-Grande, Chamber of Commerce. Samuel Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In closing, I would like to thank the government and the JSC for inviting the Semi-Grande Chamber of Commerce to this meeting, and to echo the sentiments of the business community and the business community leaders. Since the ending of the SOE, the business community has seen some relief in sales and cash flow. However, the sales and cash flow levels are not as the pre-SOE levels. And we're also experiencing some difficulties with the operating cost due to supply chain inefficiencies, which are rippling through the supply chain and amplifying costs through the intermediaries. So we hope that the government will also be looking at supply chain issues. And once again, we would just like to thank everyone, the chair and the members, for allowing us to express our views. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to announce, though, that the committee's second report on an inquiry into the status of unproclaimed legislation was recently presented in Parliament and is now available for review on the Parliament's website, www.ttparliament.org. So when we finish with our deliberations here and we prepare the report, we normally late in Parliament. So you must also look out for when this report will be made available. I should like to thank the officials, all of you, for your contribution to today's proceedings. They were well thought out. They were heartfelt, and they are, going to be proving very useful to us, as we move forward. So we thank you for coming today and for participating. Really, really, we appreciate you. Committee members who participated remotely in this virtual hearing, we thank you very much. Even one who thought that, he got a buff, I thank you as well. All of the members of my committee for your input today. And of course, the work isn't finished, so we will continue to work together. The staff of the Office of the Parliament, for your procedural and logistical support. Thank you so very much. Last night late, I had up one of the members dealing with an issue. This morning early, I was with them again. And they're always there to assist with logistical support, preparing for the meeting. And the work continues long after we finish our deliberations here. So I can't thank them enough for always being there. The support is tremendous. I appreciate you greatly. And of course, our viewing and listening audience. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for being with us and for your input into this meeting. And I want to assure all of you that we take note of not only what is said at the meeting, what is written in the chat, and this will inform, as we go forward, will inform us in how we must operate. So it's left for me now, with no other business, to declare the meeting at an end. Thank you so very much, and be safe, continue to be safe.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you all. Have a good day as well.
Enjoy your lunch, as they say on Sunday. If you listen to the mass on television, enjoy your lunch.
Bye. We have to now go and look for lunch, Chairman.